Welcome. Thank you so much for being part of this interview.
Thank you for
Um,
having me.
of course, I wanted to open up the room first for you to introduce yourself to the audience a little bit about just a few things about you.
Yeah, I'm JD Netto. I am an author. I'm an entrepreneur. Started my business at 18 years old. Published my first book at 24. So I've been doing this for quite some time.
Wow, impressive.
I'm also a musician. I'm also a visual artist, and I wear many hats.
Very nice.
It's never dull. I'll say.
Very nice. I like it. Well, Gigi, to start the first question, alongside your job as a creative and branding director for marketing agency and being a best-selling author, I wanted to hear something like a little bit about your personal branding journey and how you have developed it over the years.
Um, so very early on, I realized that true power in when it came to business and entrepreneurship lied in your brand over a product. I started noticing that people rallied behind a cause, not just a vision. People needed a cause to believe in. People needed a journey to go on. So very early on, when I started freelancing in Massachusetts, I started noticing that the more appealing the brand, the more desire it will generate and the more valuable it's going to become. So very early on, excuse me, I started paying attention to brand equity and how sometimes our best investment is in the power of our own brand and our own selves.
Very nice. Very nice. GD, as an author, what strategies do you use to communicate with your target audience? And when you have to move on to a marketer hat, how do you adapt these strategies?
It's always different. The common thread between all of them is connectivity and finding that human side across different audiences. But as an author, I sell emotion, I sell escape, an escape, I sell adventure, I sell community. Books and movies and music create community, change culture. So I need to understand that whenever I'm putting a new book out, I'm also setting the platform for community and connectivity. When it comes to being a designer, director, all of those big names, you still have to be at the core of what it means to be human. People go to you for connectivity. I always say this: the difference between Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts is not the product, is how the brand makes you feel. So
Very
it's
true. I love that.
yeah, yeah, and it's got and I grew up in Massachusetts, so this is a cardinal sin if I say that Starbucks is better than Dunkin' Donuts. Yeah, uh, but but uh, but at the end of the day, people will pay you not just for the product and the talent, but because of how you make them feel. That's why I always strive to, whenever I'm working with clients or editors across all these multiple industries that I'm a part of, I always want to make sure that people are valued and their opinions truly matter at the end of the day.
I really like how you said connectivity because it ties with the next question. From our work together, I've realized your love for storytelling, and I wanted to know how you leverage storytelling to connect with your brand and how you use it. I mean, to connect with your audience, but how you use it for your personal brand as well.
Ah, so the way I look at the world, and this can be a very JD thing, stories connect all of us from the very early days that we have recorded of humanity, of society. Stories have been carrying us through and through. So when it comes to my audience, um, I find the stories in me that can inspire them. I'm very careful with what I share and very purpose driven in what I want them to feel. Because at the end of the day, it's how a story makes you feel. And the same can be said about our work together when you're creating a story, especially in today's world where we pivot from being near consumers to now brand advocates. It's very important to understand that as companies, as people, as personal brand ambassadors, if our stories do not resonate and inspire, then we're definitely going to be lost in the noise in the next few years for sure. And it's storytellers that create movements. It's you rally behind a politician because of their story. You like an artist because of their story. At the end of the day, it's not just their art, but it's their human side.
That's very true. I like how you say that because I mean, everybody can say the same thing, but I think the story that a brand puts behind them is what makes them connect with their audience. And it's what makes the audience
Yeah,
become these brand advocates that will trade them, I mean, won't trade them for anything. So,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, a great
storytelling.
example that I can share here are movements that we see that start out with these beautiful, eloquent narratives. And then let's say if something happens to the leader of that movement, something that goes against their ideals or what they're advocating about, immediately people stop consuming that product because you don't want to be a part of that. Nowadays, we have the luxury of being a part of these things when we consume something, right? We see these huge brands exploding, not just because their products are amazing, but because of what they stand for.
Very true. Very true. And with this of storytelling, I mean, many brands use different channels to connect with their audience. I mean, we have to meet our audience where they're at. What would you say that you do to maintain your brand message and positioning across various channels to connect with your audience where they're at?
I want to make sure that I'm telling the right story. If it's if you go to my TikTok and you look at my Instagram, very different storytelling approaches. Storytelling TikTok challenges me to tell a story in 7 seconds using sounds or using something that's very um UGC-ish.
Mhm.
And as an artist, I'm 34. I started designing at 18. So it's kind of hard sometimes not to go down the route of everything being so big and massive and beautiful. But again, it's all about where your audience is at.
Yeah.
If you post something like that on Facebook, you're going to see a very different sort of reaction. So at the end of the day, it's about finding the right narrative for your audience. Something that taught me about that was when I was invited to write The Broken Miracle. I had only written fantasy at that time, and I got the invitation to write a story about one of the most renowned pianists in America. His name is Paul Cardall.
Mhm.
And as a pianist, I was already a fan of his. That's also funny because I was listening to him. I was already a fan. I knew his story before I got the invitation. But all that to say, and then I had to write a romance slash drama using a very different voice while conveying the same feelings that I conveyed in my previous work, but to a very different audience. So I exercise those muscles, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Very interesting. Well, I wanted to get onto your values expertise. How do you stay true to yourself when you build your personal brand, ensuring that your values and your expertise are there, but you're still like being authentic, you're delivering what your audience wants, but while still being you. How
Yeah.
do you handle that?
The first notion that you have to let go of is that everybody has to love you and that you have to fit everywhere. You really don't. You have to be comfortable with who you are and what your message is, and then you build an audience because an audience will believe you when you mean it. I used to, I grew up in an organized religion when I was younger, and I grew up with the notion that, oh no, everybody has to like me for the gifts that I have, or for how polished I am, or for how I try to be. But then you realize that what people actually rally behind is your humanity, it's your flaws, it's your vulnerability. and you have to let go of that. So the way to stay true to your audience, even throughout different industries, is just to stay true to you and to your journey at that time. Last year, when I did Immortal Crowns, um, I shocked many people with such a daring approach, and I knew what I wanted to do. It was very purposeful because I wanted um, my audience, those that stayed, to rally behind who I am at the core, and my curiosity and my tenacity and my boldness. And but in order for you to do that, you have to let go of the idea that everybody has to love you and that you have to fit everywhere. You have to be respected everywhere. You don't have to fit everywhere. And that's something that we all need to remember.
Yeah, that's very powerful, especially for marketers that are starting their careers.
Yes.
It's very easy for you to fall into this bubble where you have to act a certain way in
Oh,
order
yeah.
to compete with those that have been in the market for so long. So it's
Mm-hmm.
very powerful to take a look at yourself and see your own values, what you can bring to the table, and then go from there. Your
And
audience will like
play,
it.
and play to your strengths. When I started, I quickly realized the kind of design I liked, the kind of graphic design I enjoyed working on, the uh, the clients I wanted to have. I was very, very interested in finding that niche, the niche that gave me joy. For example, I'm fully aware you asked me to design, I don't know, a campaign for, let me find something very random. I don't know, like a construction company. Can I do it? Of course I can do it. I'm gonna do one hell of a job. But when you ask me to create a campaign, like, oh, let's create a campaign that tells a story of a man who migrated to X place and then he found X product that gave him X help. That's more,
Yeah, that's
you
more
know.
deeper.
Yes, that's very much my expertise right there. So
Yeah.
also be aware of that. Play to your strengths, and don't be scared of your weaknesses as well. I think it's also very important to say when something doesn't resonate with you, to just say, I don't connect.
Yeah,
And
that's very nice actually, because again, for marketers that are just starting their careers, they will accept what's coming. I mean, they will embark in the journey that's coming, but it's also very powerful to say, well, this is my niche. I mean, I'm going to be,
Mhm.
I'll deliver a very good job in this niche, and this one not so much. So
Yeah.
also being realistic about what you can and what you are not so strong at, because
And
you're not
yeah,
supposed to do everything.
exactly. And when I started, I'm not going to sit here and say I didn't do that. I absolutely did every job that came my way.
Yeah.
Because when I was 18, 19 years old, building my company from the ground up and building my name as an artist, I needed portfolio. I needed network. I needed my name out there. So I did that. And but it was after a few years when I realized, oh, okay, I can actually package this and sell this to a much more refined audience that's going to trust me a lot more. That's when it really clicked, and that's what I pursued.
Yeah. Very nice. Well, JD, I actually wanted to hear if there's an example of a story that you could tell us, that that your personal branding really opened doors for you and created opportunities throughout your career.
Wow. Uh, there are quite a few actually. I'm gonna go with the Broken Miracle because when I was approached by Paul's team, Paul Hart, they the email mentioned, the first thing they mentioned is we did some research and we see that you read a lot of the books that he does. You talk about a lot of the same values, like, storytelling, quality. Uh, I love authors like C.S. Lewis, and I love very inquisitive books. So I remember clearly that the email mentioned a quote by C.S. Lewis that I shared from the Screw Tape Letters. And it was just about me showcasing who I was online, and then they did their research and saw me on things like the Book Jet Show and BookCon, and then at those interviews I would say, oh, I and it's true. My first event, I literally just got a place here in New York at the Javits Center, paid everything out of pocket. I was starting my company, and I printed 100 books and showed up in New York with nothing. But yeah, but those books. So it was things like that, like my courage, all those values that opened the doors. Um, and the same to be said, in when it comes to graphic design and business and even public speaking. In September, we're gonna have a huge event here in New York, and I'm leading the event. It's my event, and it's only happening at the Wix headquarters because of that, because of the brand that I built over the years and the narrative of a gay Brazilian American boy who lived, and I can say this now, I wasn't documented for 5 years because of the gap in documentation. So I played that to my strength. I'm like, listen, yes, I did that, but I built this, I built that, I built this, and today I'm here. So yeah, it's and that's the thing too. I think people sometimes forget that we all love a good hero journey. We all love, that 4-story arc where the hero begins here and then first conflict, main conflict, and resolution. We all love that. So remember that. That's going to open many doors for you. But yes, those two, I'm going to go with the Broken Miracle and the Wix event. All happened because I stay true to my story and my essence.
That's very nice, very powerful. And I'm excited to see this event in September.
Yeah,
So we can
we're
be
still
part of
actually
it.
we're still revealing. We're gonna reveal things next month. We have a meeting today to discuss it. It's very much under wraps. It's the first time I'm talking about it, by
Oh, see?
the way.
Exclusive here.
Yes, yeah, it's called the Round Table.
Very nice. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, to wrap up this interview, first I wanted to thank you. It's been very nice to talk to you. I wanted to finish it off, JD, if you could give valuable like tips or advice to aspiring marketers that don't know how important building a personal brand is, and some tips on what they could do that will get them into this new journey of this marketing crazy world, for them to be successful and ready.
Network over talent. Network over talent. Network over talent. Because talent you can improve. And when it comes to networking, you burn bridges, you don't have a business.
Very
Something
true.
doesn't matter because sometimes marketers, designers, copywriters, we're always caught up in the art and we forget that in order for us to sell art, we need to create demand for it. Why do I need you? What do you bring to the table? I can literally go to 1,000 websites and get a designer that's going to deliver something. So, and in an age where we're seeing so many changes in platforms, in the way that we approach branding and marketing, it's going to be our network that's going to keep business afloat. You can tell me that you're talented, even here, even me as an entrepreneur, if I'm hiring someone, you can tell me that you're talented. I'll look at your resume and it's beautiful. If you have zero social skills, if you do not know how to treat someone well, if you do not know how to talk to a client, I would much rather take someone who's a C in talent, but an A plus in
Very
communication than a very talented individual who lacks any sort of empathy toward a client in their request. And I've been through that. I learned. So that's going to be the advice that I'm going to leave with you guys.
no, amazing. I will take that advice to myself.
Thing that sometimes we forget, let's say for us that are in this business, you're out with friends, you're networking. You are at a party, you're networking. You're posting on social media, you are networking.
That's true.
Be careful with, what you share there because you are networking, you're building your values. So always remember that.
Very true. JD, thank you so much for participating. I had a blast talking to you, and I'm sure that a lot of these aspiring marketers are going to be very interested in the conversation that we had. I wish you success in this new release that I've been reading about, and also all the events that I'm sure you're going. This is just one of the many that you're going to embark on. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.